Hello and welcome to what is realistically the last Bitch Slap interview as we transition and rebrand to the Table Rush talk show and pitch session. Again, rebranding the podcast to the Table Rush talk show and pitch session. And we're heading more towards the entrepreneurial stuff. I talk about it a lot already, but it's gonna be, how we express our spirituality through our entrepreneurship. Anyway, this is an official Bitch Slap interview, which is a replay of the Tools for a Good Life Summit interview with Dr. Jamie Marich. Dr. Jamie Marich is amazing. She's the founder director of the Institute for Creative Mindfulness. She's an EMDR specialist. EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. So she's an EMDR specialist. She's familiar with all things trauma and the healing of said and such trauma. She gives all kinds of amazing tools throughout this interview on how we can move through life's rough patches. Jamie's awesome. She literally gives actionable tools, walks me through things. It's really cool. Enjoy it. And of course, go to the Tools for a Good Life Summit.com. Register for the summit. You can hear Jamie's interview, 19 other interviews, and you can have an opportunity to get the VIP pass where everybody does bonus deep dives, give more hands-on tools, MP3s, transcripts, on and on and on. Anyway, enjoy this interview, and when you're done, go to toolsforagoodlifesummit.com. Here you go, Dr. Jamie Marich. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tools for a Good Life Summit. And right now, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Jamie Marich. And hello, and I'll read your bio real quick, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Fantastic. So Dr. Jamie Marich travels internationally, speaking on topics related to EMDR therapy, trauma, addiction, expressive arts, yoga, and mindfulness, while maintaining a private practice and online education operations. I lost my place. The Institute for Creative Mindfulness in your home base of Warren, Ohio. You are the developer of the Dancing Mindfulness Approach to Expressive Arts Therapy and the developer of yoga for clinicians. You are the author of numerous books, including the popular EMDR Made Simple, Trauma Made Simple, and Process Not Perfection. You are the co-author of EMDR Therapy and Mindfulness for Trauma-Focused Care and Healing Addiction with EMDR Therapy, a trauma-focused guide, out later this year from Springer Publishing Company. North Atlantic Books published a revised and expanded edition of Trauma and the 12 Steps in the summer of 2020, and they are also publishing the Healing Power of Jujitsu, a guide to transforming trauma and facilitating recovery, and Dissociation Made Simple, both due out in 2022. Jamie is a woman living unapologetically with a it's a tricky word, a dissociative disorder, and this forms the basis of your award-winning passion for advocacy in the mental health field. Welcome. So I thought this would be fun. You're a PhD, yes?
Yes.
So how many hours do you have into that? Like, tell me, that's how many hours?
That went into school. Well, I was in school all total from my bachelor's to my master's for 9 years. So I finished my PhD in about three and a half years. So I don't know how many hours. I've spent a lot of time in school.
A lot of time in school. And then we've also got LPCC-S.
Oh, those are just licenses that you see after my name. So LPCCS is licensed professional clinical counselor. So those are my state licenses. And this is the whole big letter soup of the helping professionals that
Yes.
in different states there are different licenses, and that's what that means.
Yeah, cool. And then the LICDC-CS, that's another.
That's licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. So one is mental health, one is chemical dependency. I don't know why
Awesome.
they're two separate licenses, but they are.
You know what? Lucky. You're lucky. And then we've got REAT.
So
What's
that is registered expressive arts therapist.
Oh, okay, very cool. RYT 500, which I believe
Registered
is
yoga teacher. Hmm.
registered, and 500. That's like next level. I think entry level is 200 hours, and then 500 hours a whole another ball
Yeah,
game.
yeah. But I really feel any yoga teacher training is about what you learn about yourself in the process. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's nice to have the credential, but I wouldn't trade the experience for anything.
absolutely. Did you jump into yoga teacher training more as a personal experience, and then you thought, yeah, I think that happens a lot, doesn't it?
Well, what's interesting is I had used it clinically over the years, but having not taken a full teacher training because I've had a yoga practice most of my clinical life. It's been an essential part of my own self nourishment and care. And so I started taking just some trauma informed yoga workshops and doing some reading and then implementing it into clinical life. And I actually didn't do the teacher training until not that long ago, just a few years ago,
Oh,
because I
cool.
knew I wanted to take my personal study in it to the next level. And
Yeah,
that was my main motivation. And I always feel that the best yoga teachers are people who simply share from their practice.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I do some yoga teaching, but a lot of it is what I integrate into my clinical work and education courses that I offer for other therapists.
Yeah, I love it. And then my understanding ending as well is once you get into like the 500 hours of the yoga teacher training, you start heavily going into perhaps some like Eastern philosophy style stuff, right? Perhaps Hindu teachings, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it depends on the program you do and it depends on the lineage, but I was very fortunate to do a really strong lineage-based training and I learned a lot with the Bhagavad Gita and
Yeah.
the sutras and philosophy, and that's just so rich and to me more important than any pose you're going to learn.
Absolutely. And I think that the asana or the movement side of yoga is such a small piece of the bigger philosophy. And not to make this all about that, but it's fun to talk about.
Right.
And then we've also got last one, RMT. So what's
Oh, Reiki master teacher.
oh, Reiki master teacher.
Yep.
Awesome. And that's energy, right? Energy work.
Oh, I love the energy.
Yeah, fantastic. And so I just thought it'd be fun to read all that because I think it's sometimes it gets lost the expertise that somebody such as yourself has in what we're going to talk about. Like you have a lifetime of involvement in not only helping people but literally learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's on one hand it is as you present it that way. Yeah, I do. And on the other hand, it's how could I not pursue the path of learning because I've needed it for my own healing and
Yeah,
tools for a
cool.
better life, right?
Yeah,
Why
absolutely.
we're here.
Yeah. Um, and then you have so the trauma and the 12 steps. Do you have a history in recovery, sobriety yourself?
Do. Yeah, I've been clean and sober almost 19 years. And that was really what was the impetus for my healing journey. And I initially came in through a very 12 step path. I still have a lot of respect for the 12 steps, but I've needed to bring in a lot of other healing modalities too, which is how EMDR came into my life, which is, I think, the
Yeah.
big thing we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then I wanted to just quick two things. One, I think trauma. So when we say trauma in the 12 steps, or we perhaps are going to throw the word trauma around as a white male, 6'2". I'm speaking for me, pull myself up by my bootstraps. Somebody tells me trauma. I'll get a little, I can, not so much anymore, but get a little bit of contemptuous. Like, I've never been through any trauma, but I think it's a lot broader
Yes.
spectrum than we would care to admit, perhaps. Someone like me. So go ahead. I'll let you speak to that for a sec.
So here's my working definition. Trauma is any unhealed human wound.
Mm,
The English word trauma is a direct translation from the Greek word that means wound.
mm,
It is a simple, direct translation. Trauma is a wound, so it's any unhealed human wound. And just like with physical wounds, that can come in all shapes and sizes.
yeah.
If the wound is not given a chance to heal, it can cause complications.
Mm,
And so we could think of physical wounding as this process of, oh, somebody has it bad. But if they're given a chance to heal it and they get treatment, it may go on not being such a big issue in their life.
yeah.
But it could be something that on the surface seems just like a scrape or a rash. But if the person is immunocompromised or they're not getting the nutrition they need, if they're not getting the care they need, if they keep picking at it, it's going to continue to be an issue. So we can look at a lot of these parallels with physical wounding
Yeah.
and what we know about physical wounding and translate it to the mental, emotional, spiritual.
Yeah.
That wounds are wounds. And yes, some are big, some are small, but individuals can experience them subjectively. And
Okay.
if wounds are not given a chance to heal, if they're not given the treatment or care that they need, regardless of how big or small they are, they could go on to create problems. So, yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point that a lot of cultural association with trauma is still things that are at the level of what we might call post-traumatic stress disorder or
Yeah.
having gone to war or having survived a natural disaster. And even in diagnostic codes, we've expanded our definition of that a little bit, that there's a lot of different ways people can go through life or injury threatening experiences, and even witnessing someone else go through it
Yeah.
might potentially qualify you for PTSD. But there's a lot of these kind of human wounds we're talking about of all kinds that won't necessarily give you a diagnosis, but that doesn't mean they're any less of an issue.
Absolutely. And I love that, or don't love it, whichever way
Yeah.
you want to look at it. But I mean, it could be going through parental divorce as a child, right? Or perhaps the way we were brought up, which was acceptable 50 years ago, now might be like, yeah, that actually might have encouraged some trauma in your life, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we are here to talk about EMDR. Thank you for indulging me with
It's a great setup question to be talking about EMDR. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Okay,
Sure.
fantastic. So if we think of life as a three-legged stool of relationships, finance, and health, and then we think of someone who is or was successful and has two of those legs fall out from under them, and I'm basically just talking about me 10 years ago, honestly. So right.
Okay.
But anyway, this could be a combination of divorce. So I went through a divorce, 10 years ago. It was heavy, a couple of kids, career upheaval. So my career was on track. All I'd really known for a good 15 years was success. And then all of a sudden that blew up. My kids one of my children was not acting like I wanted. And then I went through another failed relationship, and it was pretty heavy. And I was lucky at the time. I didn't have any physical health challenges, but for some people it can be physical health challenges, right? That coupled with some divorce or something. I mean, that can be very heavy. Or for me, both my parents died really quick at that time too. So I was shellacked. I've been in recovery for a long time as well. But up until that point, it was like, pick yourself up from your bootstraps, Mischa. You can fix it. You can work your way through it. You can success yourself through it. And then at that point, I don't know if chaos is the right word, but it was so heavy for me that it was like, man, I need new tools, right? I need new tools. I need to be open-minded because push-ups are not going to do it. Whatever. So my question to you, thinking of EMDR, what are the exact next steps you would offer this person or me so I knew I would be headed in the new right direction, that I'll have positive momentum towards getting my life back on track?
Well, let me, I feel to properly answer that question, I need to explain a little bit of what EMDR is
Yes,
because
thank
a
you.
lot of people may not have a frame of reference. So, EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. It's a
Okay.
mouthful. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And it's been around now for over 30 years. A Bay Area psychologist kind of formally tapped into the process of it when she was in recovery from her own journey with cancer. And she was very interested in mind body medicine. And when she was taking a walk in a park one day, she noticed that her eyes began to move rapidly as she was engaging with some disturbing thoughts. And so she sat down and she tested out the eye movement process deliberately of moving the eyes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to see if it would have any impact on her mental wellness. And yeah, she noticed that some of the disturbing thoughts she brought up later that night were just not as valid. They were just not as charged. And then she got a group of her other psychologist friends together and said, well, let's see what happens when we do this deliberately. And is there some kind of impact on these rapid successive eye movements on how kind of the brain processes trauma? And so, I mean, that's the crux of how EMDR was founded. And it is now one of the most researched therapies for post-traumatic stress disorder specifically.
Okay.
But a lot of other related conditions that have trauma at its base can be helped by such a method. And the method has been developed because you don't, for instance, have to use just eye movements anymore. We can put audio headsets on people. We can do
Mm,
kind of successive tapping back and forth, whether the
mm.
person is tapping themselves. And so it really is more about the back and forth bilateral engagement of the brain that
Okay.
can create these shifts in how memory is stored. So to get to your question, if a person was coming in, let's say clinically, we would look at, well, where are the stuck areas in your life? And it could be like with that three-legged stool, there's stuck areas in all three of those areas.
Yeah.
And part of what the EMDR method and approach really looks at is what are there's an understanding that trauma is more than just PTSD, kind of
Okay.
coming to your core question, right?
Yeah.
And that trauma is really any unhealed human wound that
Yes.
can get in the way of us living a more adaptive or fulfilling life.
Yes.
And so if there's, let's say, a stuck point in one of those life areas that you mentioned, something that we might do is have you identify, well, what's like a core negative belief that you
Mm.
might be carrying. So it could be something like, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm ugly. There's, any variety of ways they can be worded.
Can I ask you a question? Could it be
Yeah.
along the lines of too, let's say it's relationships where you could get stuck in this loop of I should have done this, I
Oh,
should
yeah.
have done that, if this would have happened. Okay.
Definite negative cognition. Yeah. Yeah. And so what we do is this process of kind of tracing it back or floating it back to see, well, what's the origin story of you carrying that negative belief? Like, I should have done something.
Yeah.
I should have done something. And you may think it's about your relationship, like your current romantic relationship. But when you kind of get to the origin story of it, it could be about something that happened as a child
Okay.
when you felt you should or believed you should have done something, but you were only a child, yet you've kind of carried the burden of it. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
and so what a trained EMDR therapist will do is kind of help you set up that scene of the origin story and really kind of invite you to feel into, sense into where it's at in the body
Okay.
and what you're feeling emotionally, what that cognitive statement is, what maybe some of the energetic sensations are. And then at that point, the back and forth eye movements are applied or the back and forth tapping. And it becomes very much a meditation process at that point,
Mm.
where it's not just like, okay, presto changeo, it's done. But you're invited to really sit with the feeling, sit with the experience. And I like to say this about EMDR, you don't have to tell a lot of detail about what happened.
Okay.
It's not about you reliving it, but it is inviting you to feel what it is you maybe didn't allow yourself to feel at the time.
Mm.
And so while you're inviting your client into kind of going, we say that all the time in EMDR, go with that, go with those feelings.
Mm.
Then we apply the bilateral. And notice how shifts can happen. And for some people who come in with maybe a little bit of a simpler issue, or it's more kind of singular incident trauma, it often doesn't take very long, maybe just a few sessions. But many of our clients who we work with do have complex issues, like your three-legged stool. There's issues in all three areas.
Yeah.
So you may need any number of sessions to address each of the three legs and how they interplay with each other.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question too. I get the impression, and really what I'm hoping to bring together with the summit and everybody speaking and people such as yourself is that, like, just the action of going in, like, session one can provide enough relief that it's like, yeah, I'm headed in the right direction, right? Like, I don't need 100% transformation when I walk through the door. Like, I just want 1% change. So I feel like there's hope, like there's something. Yeah.
And that's something I try to impart to anybody I work with, is to give them like one actionable thing they can do between session one and session two. And sometimes laying the relational foundation is an important part of those first couple sessions you're working with someone. So that, like you mentioned, there can be an imparting that, wow, there is hope.
Yeah. And so tell me about some of the actionable things that, like, where you could say, hey, anybody listening, you could go, here's some actionable things to show you. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I might do is show somebody, like in a first session, this whole idea of like shaking it off.
Okay.
That, inviting you to notice where you're most likely to feel stress in the body. And can you imagine that stress kind of, let's say it's in your stomach. Can you imagine it kind of moving from your stomach out through your hands and shaking the stress off and sending it down to the ground, and then maybe stomping at it? So that's one. I like to do another little skill called clench and release, which is a short express version of progressive muscle relaxation, where you really super exaggerate the tension so that in very slow motion you can notice the release. Another good kind of instant strategy is palming the face. This is used a lot in yoga nidra meditation, and it's also working with this idea of engaging the body. And then maybe you bring those hands to your forehead, to your face, to your temples, just some area where you're, and then breathe into it. And then you can always work with people on basic breathing, working with grounding objects. There's another meditation we'll do, like a 5 senses scan of your space, where you start looking around and noticing what you see, noticing what you feel, sensation wise. And that's why I often hold on to a stone. It just gives me this little sense of, yes, I'm here, I'm now, I'm present. And it could be, is there something pleasant to smell? And another little grounding exercise I'll do with folks, and I do this with yoga students, I do this with EMDR students, and it's this practice of looking down at your feet.
Okay.
And so and anybody listening, look down at your feet wherever they're at right now, and really deliberately press them into the ground so you feel a little sensation. And then let them go a little bit. Take a breath. And then press them into the ground again. And maybe you even move them back and forth, kind of in this bilateral rotating way. Just very slowly, very gently, almost as if you're taking a walk right in place. And so as you do that, I'd like you to look at your feet and think about this, that your feet will not lie to you. Your mind may pull you far into the past, may project you into the present, and that's normal when you have unhealed trauma. And it can make you feel overwhelmed and not sure where you're at. But if you're ever unclear on where you're at, look down at your feet. Your feet will always tell you that you're here and now and present and connected. And you can do that just as a simple meditation, maybe even kind of pumping the feet back and forth. And I tell my people all the time, like, I don't expect a little exercise like that to fix all your ails, because no instant thing can.
Yeah.
But is this kind of a meditation or an exercise that you might be willing to practice doing every day? so
And
that you can work on this idea of presence.
yeah. And oftentimes that can be coming back to the moment with those simple tricks can be enough to I don't know, get me over the hump of the moment, shall we say, or as those emotions ebb and flow, or I know when all that was going on in my life, like a lot of times it was trying to survive the moment until the tide went back out.
Mhm.
Right, and then the tide had come back in, and I don't know if that makes any
Yeah,
sense or
makes
not.
a lot of sense. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, perfect, fantastic, that's awesome, thank you. And then the I'm curious, I think you've been involved in obviously your training and schooling and active, and you're prolific in your teaching, I would say, yes, with your writing and speaking and all these sorts of things, yes.
I've been so accused. So yes, I am. I know.
Okay. You've seen it help a lot of people, I guess that's my question, and I'm curious about that, like the sense of how, I don't know, powerful the right word is, or healing, or I mean, I'm thinking of the guy like me, that's perhaps, I'm not 40 anymore, but in my 40s, coming out of a successful period of my life where how do you explain to someone in my terms so I can be like, oh yeah, this is powerful, this is good, this is something I should potentially tap into if I'm struggling.
Mhm. Well, I personally feel it's always a good idea to heal your wounds.
Yeah.
And whether you're doing that with EMDR or any other healing practices that are being discussed here, it's important to not keep putting a band-aid on them,
Mm.
which is what we often do in a variety of ways. For some of us, it is drugs and alcohol and acting out. For some of us, it can be kind of getting so physically engaged in yoga that we don't really go there with letting ourselves feel.
It almost becomes a distraction.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So if ever I have a client that's like, why should I try this EMDR? Why should I do any of these healing practices you're talking about? I really try to look at it as well, how's usually people who end up in my office are there because something's not right. Something just doesn't feel right
Yes.
in their life. And I use this language a lot of, would you consider that because there's something that isn't healed, this is why you're stuck where you're at in your life. So, yeah, there may be risks in going there, but are there also risks in not going there?
Mm. I love that. That's such a powerful thought. It's almost like risk reward, right?
Yeah.
Like you have literally nothing to lose and everything to gain by taking a stab at it versus continue suffering. I mean, I don't mean to laugh about it, but
Mhm.
yeah, perfect. I think that this is a great place to end, Jamie. I love the description of it and the grounding techniques that you gave. And if everyone watching, if this interview with Jamie was fantastic and you want to get even more content from Jamie, upgrade to the all access pass for the bonus interview, because we're going to do a bonus interview here next. And I know that there's going to be even more amazing content, like the little trick, that feet thing I was thinking about, which was awesome in the moment. But what was the the Bruce Willis movie? Die Hard. Did you see Die Hard?
Years ago.
Yeah, remember that he
Was
was like
working.
they had him. He took his shoes off and rubbed his feet in the carpet. Anyway,
Glad it linked up.
yes, sorry, yes. Yeah, so upgrade to the all access pass for the bonus interview. And are there any final thoughts to share that we did not get a chance to cover?
Just want to encourage your listeners. You can also visit me, traumamadesimple.com. Traumamadesimple.com.
Okay,
That is where they
fantastic.
can access a lot of just things I have out there. Yep.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that. And then I have also got, they can find you on the your business pages, Institute for Creative Mindfulness.com.
That's right. Yep.
Awesome. And then your general page is jamiemarich.com, JamieMarich.com. Correct?
Yep.
Fantastic. Again, everybody click the button to this on this page. It's either going to be down there or over there or over there. I'm not sure where yet, to get unlimited access to all of these interviews in the all access pass. And I'm going to hit stop and let's hang on for round 2. Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.